Kia ora koutou and welcome to our Sunday night live stream. We're both nice and relaxed in our lounges. Kia ora, Shai, how are you?
Hey Geoff, good. How are you doing?
Oh, it's turned southerly here in Wellington, so it's nippy.
So just a
Yes.
normal day for you then?
Ouch, ouch. And wow, and where did you score that awesome call center relic on your on your head?
Actually, an awesome volunteer has given it to me, so at least I might not look cool, but the sound should not have any issues. So don't tease me too much. It's the
Where
quality,
does where
not
does
for
that you where does that you used to work in a call center? Is that true?
That is true.
Can you
I
can you
did work at a market research company in my first few years at uni. I
well,
was one
market
of those,
research?
yeah, market
Ah,
research, yeah,
can you
surveys.
give us just one line to show us your call voice, your phone voice? Do you have a phone voice?
Actually. I do have a phone voice apparently. It depends what I'm calling you for, but yes, everyone has a phone voice, right?
But business. I want a business. I want to hear business style.
Should I say the name of the market research company I used to work at?
Yeah, go on.
Okay. Hi there, this is Shai calling from the AC Nielsen Market Research Company. Do you have 5 minutes of your time?
Oh boy, that sounds exhausting talking like that all day long.
Let me tell you, this is like going back now 15 years.
How big is your mug, man? It's even bigger than mine. I thought this was
It's the
wow.
size of oh my god, I can see that it's the size of my face. Okay. Oh well,
Yeah. This is
convenient though. It'll last our whole life.
this is the fascinating banter that you get, folks, with people in lockdown. Seriously though, Shai,
It's
how's
only
how's
4 days in.
I know how is morale up there? Because like I went for a run with a friend today. I suppose you guys can't do that. So I mean,
No, unless it's your bubble friend.
your bubble.
No. In saying that, it's actually been a beautiful weekend up here, and I live really close to the beach, so have been going there yesterday morning and today as well. And it is like a highway, absolutely packed. I have to say though, I did notice today, even from yesterday, an uptake in mask wearers. And when you're a mask wearer, you notice other mask wearers. And it actually made me think, is this how men with beards feel? Because I always remember old colleagues when they had beards would always have this like little eye thing with other men with beards. So now I'm thinking the same applies with masks. So you really notice other people in masks. Anyway, it's just a little theory. But so yeah, it was cool to see definitely more people today were wearing them. And so hopefully that kind of trend increases.
Yeah, I broke mine today, but the supermarket said that they'll have more in stock tomorrow. So
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
as
I have some fabric ones, but we also got some of those disposable ones as well, just in case. And they had them fully stocked near to us, so that was good.
so the election date, we hear 10 a.m. tomorrow what the decision is.
Yep.
But what was Winston going on about today?
So he released this letter that he had sent to the Prime Minister calling for a delay, which is just AKA we're not getting enough airtime and we also don't know how to adapt to the 21st century, so we're just going to complain and throw our toys. And I know some people out there are going to hate on me for being critical of that, but I don't care because the way that I see it is politicians complaining about not getting enough face time with the public is the same issue that businesses have been struggling to have face time and connection with customers.
Yeah.
And if they have been struggling, it's a bit of a slap in the face then to have politicians try and change the rules to suit them when
Yeah.
businesses couldn't just change the rules to make life easier for them.
Absolutely. And you can't argue Winston hasn't had enough platform over the last 3 years. The fact is he blew it in, buying stuff for his mates in the fishing industry and the racing industry. So no
Yep,
wonder people are over him. I mean,
exactly.
later, dude. So what's your pick for tomorrow?
I think we will get a delay. I think it might be I'm hoping it's a short one, just to make up for the amount of time that Auckland is going to be spent in level 3. That would be that's what I'm really hoping to see. If we have to see anything at all, that would make
So a couple of
sense.
week delay, kind of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 week and maybe 3, but anything more than that is just politics for politics' sake, really. And we have had this election date has been set for months. Parties have been campaigning, whether they had their official campaign launch or not,
Yeah.
all year. Because that's the problem with our electoral system. The second that the date is set in one manner or form, parties start campaigning straight away. And
100%.
most political parties had their campaign launches in July. Their policies for the year are done. Nothing's going to change. The only restriction at the moment, at least for Auckland, is just losing that face to face. But there is no reason why these community groups can't then host the exact same event in the way that they want to via some online platform.
Yeah. And I mean, ultimately, right now, Winston and National it's pretty much just looking like sour grapes, right? The fact that they're not doing well in the polls, that's why they're calling for the election to be delayed.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's ridiculous.
It's naked
So
self-interest.
it's just absurd. And National talking about at least November, if not next year. So they don't agree with Labor. They don't agree with their approach to dealing with COVID. But sure, let's keep them in power even longer. It's just so they don't lose. I mean, it is politics. It is just political power plays. And look, don't get me wrong. Obviously, Geoff, if Top had more time to campaign, that gives us more time to access more people and things like that. But it's not, there's a very, very good reason why it should not be used as a tool for all different political parties and
Yeah.
politicians to use as a football. Because we would just say, oh, have it on this date that suits us, or no, this date that suits us. It's just madness. It would go on forever.
So you're actually telling me, Shai, that you're not speaking out of self-interest right now? Is this the politicians not speaking out of self-interest?
Oh, I'm acknowledging that I'm speaking against my own interests, but I care about democracy first and foremost as much as I love Top.
A bit like me being a property owner, but thinking we need to tax property the same as other investments. Anyway, so the election tomorrow, and Grant Robertson's going to be announcing his stimulus package as well. And of course, I think we're all expecting, an extension to the wage subsidy. It's been made pretty clear.
Mm.
And I mean, and it's going to cover the whole country. So we are going to continue to keep. I mean, this is not a nice conversation to have, right? But as long as our borders are shut, there are some businesses that are just not going to be viable, particularly in tourism. And are we really going to keep them going for a year and 2 years until our borders are open again? I mean, it's not a nice conversation to have, but the fact is that these are zombie businesses right now, and extending the wage subsidy is just throwing good money after bad. I mean,
Well, I think this cluster that's just emerged reminds us that COVID is a current state of life. And we probably got really complacent and thought that we had moved past it and look at us, clock the game of COVID. But we didn't. And it is still here. And as you say, Geoff, it's going to be here for a long time to come, at least a year, right? Before we're talking about widespread vaccination rates at the levels that we need anyway.
Yeah, at least
At
another year.
best case scenario, right? So, what happens to all these businesses that are just playing this kind of waiting game, relying on these quick fixes? I mean, how long do you prop something up before the inevitable?
Better to give the money to people and let them spend it in ways that suit them. Some will use it to put money on the table, to put food on the table. Some will use it for tourism, and that's the best way to keep our tourism businesses as going as best we can, is by encouraging Kiwis to get out there and enjoy their own country.
Totally, and then Kiwis get the benefit of propping up these businesses as well. So it's a sort of more of a win-win.
Yeah, I saw your rant about Waitomo Caves as you were driving past on your way to New Plymouth.
Yeah, so for anyone who didn't see that little spiel, so they got a specific grant, $4 million as a prop up for them to help get them through COVID and the impacts of it. And they do have a lot of staff, and so that's great because it's a quick fix to help them get through this time. But that's just one business in a sector that has thousands of small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses all across the country. And it was one of those ones where the government seem to pick and choose who the winners should be, rather than that being determined by Kiwis who want to spend their money at particular operators over others or on particular activities over others. And if instead Kiwis had vouchers that they go in and spend that the government then pays for later, Kiwis get the enjoyment and businesses have an ongoing source of revenue so they're sustainable into the future.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't all the school kids in the Waikato love to go to Waitomo Caves? For example, do they do that? I don't know.
Yeah,
But that would
I'm
be.
sure they would love that.
Now's the time for things like that, right? Now is totally the time to be doing things like that. Have you got any tourism experiences that you have been that you are just waiting to execute in this environment without international tourists to compete with?
I do, but it relates to a birthday present for my mum, so I'm not
Oh,
going
so
to
you don't
say
want to
where the location
yeah.
is.
Well, for
I hope
me,
she's not watching.
I'm actually planning to do the ironically on my birthday as well. I'm planning on doing the Milford Track on my birthday.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I always like to go tramping on my birthday because it's like between Christmas and New Year, and so it's like a really weird time to have a birthday. Um, but so I always like to go tramping, but I figured, I'll do a special tramp this year. One I've always wanted to do, but you kind of, you have to book it so far ahead. It's so hopefully, anyway, I haven't booked it yet, but because bookings don't open for a while yet, but I'm hoping.
That'll be awesome.
Yeah.
But it's true, right? Because at the end of the day, we don't now have to compete with so many international tourists around, so we can have access to these great walks that you would normally have to wait sometimes years for. So silver lining.
That's right. Yeah, so that's the whole, that kind of brings us to the whole conversation about that long-term strategy, Shai, because are we going to be keeping our borders closed for potentially another year, maybe even longer? And there's been obviously David Seymour the other day questioning whether that should be the strategy. And I mean, before we get into this conversation, because it's a very nuanced conversation, I do want to say up front, the one thing that I do kind of agree with from the people who have been making these calls is that the government could be more transparent with the information that it has, with which it's making these big strategic decisions, and could set out some of the reasoning a bit more than it already has.
I mean, and if they do have really good reasons for that led them to the elimination strategy, great, share that, and maybe that will calm some of those voices who are really opposed to that strategy. That would go a long way in providing, transparency goes a long way in providing people confidence in decisions, right?
Absolutely. And I think that is what is causing a lot of these, for some people it's questioning, for some people it's more, theories about ulterior motives that are popping up. And I think that better transparency would actually take care of a lot of those, a lot of those concerns. Sunlight's always the best disinfectant, but I mean, I thought this
not for
was
COVID.
Not for COVID, no.
Don't misinterpret.
Very good. Not sunlight, not bleach. So, and I mean, I think this is a worthwhile conversation to have, though, because there's a lot that you would need to take into account in making a decision, a big strategic decision about this, whether to switch the elimination strategy. And I mean, it would be interesting to see how much information on these different things that the government has. I mean, let me do. How about I cover some of the economic questions?
Yeah,
that
I was
they
just
should be
about to
looking
ask
at?
you.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
you can talk about the health stuff, yeah, because you talked a bit about that with Ben the other night, our Dunedin candidate, Dr. Ben Peters. So on the economic side of things, I mean, what would be good to see would be some analysis on how New Zealand has been performing compared to other countries and their strategies. And people have been doing this, but I imagine there's a lot of work going on in the Treasury, for example, in New Zealand, looking at these sorts of things. And it certainly seems like, although New Zealand was hit hard by the lockdown in terms of economic output, that we rebounded quite quickly because we were able to open up our economy at least within our borders, and that caused quite a big rebound. And certainly the impression I get from the statistics that I've seen is that overall, compared to a lot of countries, New Zealand's actually been doing really well, or quite well at least, in terms of in terms of the economy compared to other countries, because a lot of the countries, even where they have had quite relaxed rules around lockdowns and that sort of thing, people have been just staying at home because they're worried about getting COVID and clogging up the hospitals, and the health systems are in disarray, and people are having time off work if they do get sick, and you know what I mean. All of these things do add up to quite a big cost on a society, and it seems to me, at least from the data that I've seen, that thus far, looking backwards, and we can talk, I think we can both talk about looking forwards later, but thus far, looking backwards, the elimination strategy has served us pretty well. That's on the economic side of things.
But then before we go on, I know we can go through the health stuff, but how sustainable is it? Even if I'm so sorry, Ron, I'm having a real meal with this. Hang on.
It's the
Okay.
downside
Can you hear me?
of the call center. Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Sorry. Really sorry.
We can hear you just fine.
So even let's assume this is the last, most unrealistic, but the last time that COVID flares back up in the community, and we progress at level 1 for a year. How long really, as open as our domestic economy will be, how long really could we survive economically going along that way without tourism opening back up, for example?
Well, tourism is worth about 5 or 6% of our economy. In terms of GDP, it's a bit more in terms of employment, because there's a lot of sort of relatively low-paid jobs in tourism. But about half of domestic tourism is Kiwis. So really, what we're talking about is around about say 3% of a hit of about 3% of GDP. Now, in some areas that will look a lot worse than that. I was in Queenstown for the roadshow just recently, and you can really feel it there. I mean, apparently they had a good time during the school holidays, but you can really get a sense that places like Queenstown are getting hammered by this. And of course, accommodation places are also pretty hard hit, because a lot of Kiwis have places to stay when they travel, all that sort of stuff. So some sectors will get hit, pretty hard. But if economies adjust, really, and if this was actually going to stay in place for another year, then a lot of the people that might normally work in tourism in Queenstown, for example, I mean, when I was in Queenstown, there were people there from Ashburton who were recruiting for the agricultural sector, to come and work on, further up in South Canterbury to help on farms and freezing works and all that sort of stuff. So people will find other employment, and the economy will adjust.
But we can only do that, right, if we accept that we need to move to something different. That we're not
Yeah,
just constantly waiting, or maybe another few months we'll open back up, maybe another few months. We need to surely have a long-term plan that says, right, we are not going to be opening up for X amount of time, and if not, how do we pivot the economy?
yeah, and how do we help people get redeployed effectively? And that is really bad news for some small businesses, and it will be uh, difficult to just reopen all that stuff instantaneously if for some reason the borders do open. But to be frank, when the borders do reopen, I don't see tourism suddenly springing back into life. I mean, I really do think this stuff, the world has changed in this approach, in this respect, and it may take some time, if ever, for so-called normality to return.
That's a really good point, Geoff, because I think a lot of people who have this kind of a conversation just assume that if we were to change our strategy and do a more opened up approach, all of a sudden people would come, which is just not necessarily going to be the case at all,
No,
because you only need to look at the news for a few minutes of world news and you can see that everyone else overseas is still very much dealing with the same problem.
absolutely. So that's kind of the economic. Well, actually, we're starting to get into the future-looking stuff, aren't we? But the future-looking stuff is pretty interesting. So we'll come back to that. But can we cover the health side then too?
Well, just super briefly. I mean, I don't know if anyone watching saw me talk to Ben on Friday night, and he's going to do, quick plug, he's going to do another live on Friday this week as well to answer any of your COVID-related questions. But basically, we went through breaking it down. There's a lot of conversations from people who think this is all a big overkill because it's just the flu anyway. And Ben was explaining it's not just about the death rate that is higher. It's not just about how sick people get most of the time. It's that they also have these potentially long-term side effects from having caught COVID. But also, if you just were to, because I asked him this question, Geoff, if you were just to let COVID open up and just let it go through the community, what would we expect to see? And it kind of does come back to the economic point, because if you were to do that, and we can just look overseas to see examples of this, but when you do that, you still have huge portions of society who are homesick and huge parts of our economy not being able to keep running because they have so many people on sick leave. So even if we did that approach, you're still going to be dealing with a halt in many areas, and there's just not going to be enough workers there. So it kind of does come back to it. The health
Yeah.
response is the economic response at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
there's less of a trade-off than I think people automatically assume, and actually the two sort of seem to more go hand in hand, at least at the moment. But yeah, I mean, that kind of does bring us to, the other side of that is, I mean, yes, a lot of the people that are that are dying are relatively near the end of their life anyway. I mean, it does affect the elderly the most, but I mean, the value of those years lost is still high. I mean, we're talking about grandparents being able to spend time with their grandchildren, and that stuff does still have quite a big value.
every single person is someone's grandparent or mother or brother or sister. They're still people.
Yeah,
So when I see those kinds of conversations, like you're saying, Geoff, it just honestly it does my head in because they're not just numbers.
yeah. So then looking forward, of course, things do get a bit more interesting, in terms of um, speculating about how this whole thing might pan out. I mean, just as an aside, I mean, if this particular reinfection did come from a cool store, like from goods from overseas, I mean, that's pretty mind-blowing, right? I mean,
It's
how do
hard to
we
comprehend if that is if caps locks bold underlined if,
if
which we
yeah,
don't know yet, and it's low
yeah,
chances. We keep getting told it's very, very low chances. But yes, if that has happened, how on earth are we going to expect customs to keep on top of the testing that would then be needed at the borders,
yeah,
at the ports to prevent this from happening again?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
can't imagine them
It's
having
mind-blowing.
those resources.
Yeah, which then, if that is the case, then that starts to make you think, well, maybe this thing is impossible to keep out of the country. But even then, that's still you can still have a very strong contact tracing approach, and it just means we keep doing what we're doing, right? I mean, that is a possible strategy. But yeah, I mean, if you fast forward this a year, I mean, what people I guess, are arguing is, well, if the disease runs out of steam in the rest of the world, and here we are in New Zealand, our little, you know, uh,
Our little big bubble.
our little, big bubble island of tranquility, of COVID free, then there is quite a big question there about about whether we have had the right strategy, because the rest of the world could open up, and things could carry on as normal, and we would then have to either wait for a vaccine, or I guess then we'd move into some sort of strategy of trying to keep vulnerable people isolated and let the rest of us get infected, which would be um, that would be pretty difficult to do. I mean, perhaps it could be planned for, um, but yeah, there's some really big questions there. But I mean, that's just one possible future, right? I mean, the other possible future is that this thing keeps mutating, and it does become like the flu, and actually, um, that the world has changed forever. In which case, actually, perhaps staying COVID free is a positive thing.
Mm. I guess if it does become like the flu, though, then we know that science will be able to treat it like the flu. So different strains as they change, the vaccine will adapt each and every year, like we have with the flu. Every year we might have a slightly different strain in there that they vaccinate for. So they would be able to keep up because in New Zealand they would look at of the northern hemisphere, what strains they've had a lot of in their winter, and for example, and then we get updated and vice versa. So
Mm, mm.
it would be manageable once we get to the point of
Having a vaccine,
vaccinations.
yeah, that's right, that's right. And I think, I mean, well, it's you know, then there's a conversation about, well, how long is a vaccine or a treatment likely to take? And as we were saying before, it's probably at least another year. And then how long before the disease burns itself out in the rest of the world? Well, I mean, my understanding, and Ben may have talked about different things, but I mean, my understanding is that a lot of these big pandemics have sort of three waves, and we're sort of barely into the second wave right now. So I mean, this is going to keep rolling for a long time. And so at what point do we start to question if New Zealand is in the right place? I mean, again, if the government had information on these sorts of things, it would be pretty interesting to see and to sort of understand their reasoning for sticking with the elimination strategy. But I have to say, based on the limited information that we have, it seems to me still to be the right thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. The alternatives seem horrific. We've seen them in, even just looking at Sweden, and obviously the States is the most extreme example. So we know we don't have to dream in hypotheticals. We can just look overseas and look at what other approaches have achieved. And if we'd have followed Sweden, we would have something like 3,000 deaths by now. So
I think it was 6,000, but yeah,
6,000 there, and I think they have maybe about double our population. So
right.
I think it would,
yeah.
Someone can fact check me. I think it's about that. So yeah, I'm honestly, I feel really lucky and really grateful to be in New Zealand and having at least tried this approach. And you're right, Geoff, if we ask questions and information changes and it looks like another approach in time is the better one to take, then we need to follow and adapt to the evidence as it emerges.
Yeah.
But it's good that we're never asking the question of what would have happened if we had tried elimination.
Yeah. And I think, just to return to the initial point in this conversation, I think it would be great if the government was more open about their reasoning on this stuff and was sharing the information that they have to justify their stance on this, because I think that would allay a lot of the concerns that the public have.
Yeah, that's such a good point.
Big day tomorrow, Shai. Massive day tomorrow with these announcements at 10 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, what's happening with the election? What do the wage subsidy extensions look like? What else is there? I feel like there's something else.
Well,
you and I are doing road shows.
Yeah, we're doing our road show. We were planning on we didn't coordinate that very well, did we? But
well, if they had been in real life, it wouldn't have made a difference.
Well, exactly. So I'm doing my Rongotai roadshow tomorrow night at 6 p.m. and Shai has kindly shifted her second upper North Shore roadshow to 7:30. So that'll all be streamed online, and we're going to try some whizzy Zoom technology that allows you to actually join us on the call and ask us questions. Not quite face to face, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, we want to simulate the real life roadshow as much as we can in this non-real life event situation.
Yeah. So check out the events on our Facebook page to find out more information about those, and you're more than welcome to join us. And
and some of our candidates have events this week, and I'm just going to pull it up because I asked a few what they've got. If anyone is watching and they're in the Queenstown or Southland area, at the Craft Beer House tomorrow at 6:30 in Queenstown. It's the Change of Heart event, focusing on food production, low emissions food production, and our candidate Joel is going to be speaking at that. I hope I've got that right, Joel. Put a link to your event in the comments.
And it looked like he was speaking with some quite illustrious speakers. I think Geoff Reed and Alison Jews, two massive names in the they're very much pro farming, but also pro environmentally friendly farming. They're big names in that part of the world. So that'll be an awesome event if you're down that way. Also Tuesday night, Abe and I are going to do a AMA about the cannabis referendum, and we'll also be covering off some of the arguments from the Say Nope to Dope campaign. So that'll be a good fun conversation to have. So that's with our Wellington Central candidate Abe Gray, who is, of course, has been a long time campaigner in the cannabis legalization space and is incredibly knowledgeable on the subject. And
I've also got a drug reform debate this week as well.
Oh,
online.
You do, right?
Yeah, as well. It's on Wednesday, and it will be on Facebook somewhere. I'll probably put it on my page at 6:30 on Wednesday. It was obviously going to be in real life, but again, it's going to be online.
And I think this sort of stuff is great to do because, while, particularly until we know the date of the election, I mean, the fact is those referenda are still going to happen. And so it's great to keep talking about them and raising awareness about those issues. So good stuff on that front.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to really quickly, I know we're about to wrap up, Geoff, but just really quickly, I just want to shout out to our team of candidates. Thank you so much for working so hard. I'm sure all of our supporters who follow you can see how much of yourselves you give to TOP because of your passion for making New Zealand better. And I feel so lucky who are on our team. And thank you. That's all I wanted to say there.
And we are probably going to have an announcement about one final candidate this week. Is that right, Shai?
Maybe.
That'll be interesting to see. Awesome.
Watch this space.
Hey, well, great to chat with you, Shai, on a Sunday night.
Yes.
I hope you unwind. What are you going to be?
Well, actually, I need to go back and do some of my uni assignment.
Oh, have you not finished that yet?
No.
I gotta say, Shai, you told me this morning that you had this uni assignment to do, and then I saw you on Twitter.
It's true.
I saw you on Twitter ranting about Winston Peters.
It's true. And you know what? I'm really disappointed in myself because I'd actually been doing really well, had been not replying to people today, had been really trying to focus. And then I heard Winston was doing this announcement and I accidentally jumped into Twitter and I got stuck there for some time. So that's on me. And that means that my Sunday night, those 2 hours that I lost this afternoon.
But it also shows the passion with which TOP's deputy leader, Shai Navot, takes her democracy issues. She is a passionate advocate for, resetting our democracy and making sure that it works for people. So, ka pai, Shai.
Even when it's against our interests.
Even when it's against your personal interest.
But that's
wonderful.
Fine. Anyway, take care, Geoff, and good luck for your roadshow tomorrow.
Oh, thanks. You too.
Okay. Talk to you then. Take care, everyone.